On to Heal Firebrand now. So let's go right in. Introduction, basically the same as before. Introduction, trade lines, utility skills, a bit about weapon choices, and basic rotation, more or less. So let's start right off the bat with your interface. You have mantras. They have 3 charges each, and they recharge 1 charge at a time. Another thing is the Firebrand mechanic is tomes. Like this displays, no, this are your tomes. If you press one of the button, you open one of your tomes, and they replace all your weapon skills. Every tome has by default 5 charges that are displayed here. As you can see, currently I use 2 skills already, and there are only 3 out of 5 charges left. You can leave the tome early, like by only casting 1 skill, and then either by weapon swapping or by pressing the same button again to leave the tome. This is basically too long to read about Firebrand. Sorry. New Firebrand mechanics are not that present on other classes. This is about mantras now. Mantras work like this. They will be applied to allies in your subgroup first that are in this area, like this circle and this cone in front of you. If someone of your subgroup is in this area, shape, whatever, they will get the boon you're applying with, okay? With the mantra. If they are outside, they look for another target of your squad in this shape. So, your responsibilities as a Heal Firebrand. You're responsible for quickness. You did that with Mantra of Potence and Feel My Wrath. You're responsible for Fury in your subgroup. You do that also with Feel My Wrath and X2. You're responsible for Signet uptime. Signet is... let's talk about it later, actually. You're responsible for a bit of utility, like to block attacks with Aegis, or give stability so you don't get CC'd, so your subgroup doesn't get CC'd or squad. And you want to provide CC as well. You're also responsible for a bit of protection that you apply with Shield 4, and you are also more or less responsible for healing, but your healing capabilities are not as big as I would say for the Druid. Let's go to the traits. On a trait line. Trade forward. There are 3 options, or 3 best in slot traits. First one, increase your healing to other allies each time you block an attack, and then something about mace skills that we ignore for now. So basically, when you block an attack, you get this buff applied and your healing output is better. The end of your dodge roll heals nearby allies, really important. So you heal actually with dodging. Aegis heals when it blocks an attack. Okay, cool. I play Aegis, so additional healing, yes. And really important, symbols are improved and heal allies. Improved means they are bigger and they have a longer duration, and then they heal. Nice. So, too long to read. Symbols heals. Symbols on your weapon skills, for example, and dodging heals. Nice. Next part. Radiance. So, also straightforward. Gain a light aura and blind nearby followers when you activate F1. Okay, cool. Your position is increased. Cool. Gain increased power while wielding a one-handed weapon in your main hand. And something about sword skills. This is one of those cases where you look at the other options, and this is just the best one you can take. So more DPS. Nice. F1 is reduced when you kill a foe. Yes, that's very nice, really nice, because we want to use our F1 actually as often as possible. It doesn't work as often in raids as before because ANET did some, let's call it bug fixes. Next part, striking an enemy with the damaging effect from Virtue Skill 1 casts Lesser Signet of Wrath. This was written when there was no Firebrand, but basically, if you open your F1 tome and hit a foe with any of the skills, you cast Lesser Signet of Wrath. We keep that in mind for later. Next part, this is really important, okay? Next part, attacks against burning foes have an increased chance to critically hit. Your ferocity is increased. Okay, cool. Then the most important trait in your entire build, perfect inscriptions. Signets gain reduced recharge, improved passive effects, and share their passive effects with nearby allies when activated. So, Signet is a utility skill where you basically have a passive effect that improves your power or your condition damage, for example. And this makes it, if you press the button, you keep this buff for a few seconds and you share it to a few allies. The fun part is the value is of one Signet is 216 power. This is very close to main stat power on your weapon, on your two-hand weapon. So actually really big damage boost. Okay. So summary of the straight line. Share signals to your subgroup when you activate them. You activate a signet, like the signet of Wrath, when you hit a foe with a skill of your F1 term. Okay. Really important. Now onto the Firebrand trait line. Also pretty much straightforward for now. Grant allies quickness when you use your heal skill. Okay, cool. Your mantra skills slow nearby allies, which is great for some power chronomancers. The effect mantras gain reduced charge recovery time. Nice, less cooldowns. Gain increased attributes while affected by quickness. Pork, take that as well. And tome skills gain reduced recharge. Retain virtuous passive while they're on cooldown. So more, less cooldowns. So basically, too long to read about the straight line is your healing skill grants quickness. So, just for the record, this straight line exists, and Snowcross tells you to take it over Radiance. I didn't put any arrows here because I don't think it's a good straight line. Snowcross tells you to, I believe it's 222. So basically, gain resolution and Aegis when disabled. Lul. Like honestly, lul. Then gain resolution when you activate a virtue. Resolution you grant has increased duration. Okay. Activating virtue skill 2 removes conditions from nearby allies. Virtue skill 2's passive effect is stronger. So you're buffing your healing output a bit with this. And you have a condition cleanse when you press F2. There are other options to gain condition cleanses that are better. Next part, gain condition damage based on your vitality. Okay. Virtues gain reduced recharge. This is more or less the best part about the straight line. Like you have even less cooldown on your tomes, but it's not really needed, and you would be dropping the buffs from the signets that I was talking about before. And then here, nearby allies gain the passive effect of Virtue skill 2. So also a little bit more of healing output, but at the cost of signature. And signature is really, really strong. Okay. So as I said, tomes have less cooldown and cleanse conditions with F2. This is what you would take away from the straight line, but don't. Just don't. So Heal Tempest didn't have a lot of utility skills options, but Firebrand actually does. So I put them into categories. Let's start with quickness. This is your heal skill, Mantra of Solace. Gain health, grant Aegis to you and allies in front of and around you. And with Liberator's Vow, grant allies quickness when you use your heal skill. This has a 7-second internal cooldown, so you should not spam this skill, but you cast it once initially to grant quickness. Then you wait a few seconds, and then it should be recovered already, and then you cast it again. You want to use this skill for situations where you have to block certain mechanics or attacks from a boss. Then Mantra of Potence, straightforward, grant quickness and might to nearby allies. Pork. Feel my wrath, grant fury and quickness to nearby allies. Also pork. So basically, those two you wanna cast off cooldown. Obviously, only if somebody is in range. Still. You never want to swap these out. Never. A Heal Firebrand without quickness is just worthless because other classes can cover those jobs better, as for example a Heal Tempest, right? Good. Next part, the signets. Those are your two options. One improves power and one improves condition damage. So you actually have to look at your subgroup and know the builds a bit. If you have only Dragon Hunters, for example, you definitely want to take this one and not take this one because Dragon Hunters are power classes and you use this to improve their power. Also, a nice little thing about this is it's a big CC. It's a 3-second knockdown. So, for example, on Slothosaur, you see the break burn. You don't want to cast the skill immediately. when the break bar appears, just like in the last third of the break bar or last fourth, depending on your group skill. So you break the bar, and your subgroup immediately gets a damage boost to start bursting. So this is just something you would use off cooldown because immobilizing is, yeah, okay, nice to have, but increased condition damage is really nice. Remember, if you open F1 and then hit a foe with an attack, you cast a lesser version of this, but it's also free condition damage boost to your subgroup. So let's talk about your healing options. You have the Bow of Truth. This has 2 charges, and then with a slight delay, there is a continuous healing in an AoE that you targeted or selected. Okay? Pretty nice healing, but you have to know the boss fight a bit in advance to precast the bow, right? In comparison to this is Merciful Intervention. Shadow step to an ally in the targeted area and heal around them. So this is reactionary. You see people are dropping health, you can use it to heal them. If no ally is present in a target area, this ability will not shadow step. So basically, you would have just wasted a skill. It will go on cooldown. Another really cool thing about this is you can actually heal people with it that are in down state, like about 20%. So if you're fast enough, you can actually, and they only have one, they have no down strikes or down penalty from before, you can immediately revive them, which is really, really nice. So next option is Mantra of Law. Cleanse 2 conditions on nearby allies and apply region. I just put this one and the next one for completeness sake. It's not super strong, but it's one option to gain condition cleanses on your build. Because region should be covered in theory. Next one, hold the line. Apply protection and region to nearby allies. Good thing to have, for example, on river, but in a boss fight, only take this if your squad struggles with protection uptime and region. It's a nice little buff for your boons. Then CC skills. Bane Signet, I already talked about this. Knock down and damage your foes. If you're in a power sub, this should be your default loadout. 2 other options to further improve your CC. Sanctuary, 5 pulses of knockback over 5 seconds. Also blocks missiles. Really strong on, for example, Sabir, because of projectiles that you want to block, but also because Sabir has really, really long break bars. So also strong break bar. So you can place it down and it won't get wasted because the break bar is broken after 1 second and the skill lasts for 5 seconds. If it's a really short and fast break bar, I would take Hammer of Wisdom. It's similar to like Bow of Truth. You have 2 charges and then it does a knockdown. Also has a little bit of an animation cast time, but basically, depending on the break bar on the boss, you take Sanctuary or Hammer of Wisdom. So, other utility skills. Stand your ground, 10-man stability, really nice. You can take that, for example, on Cairn or Gossavel. Wall of Reflection, summon a barrier of mystic power that reflects projectiles for 8 seconds. You can use that on Matthias to reflect projectiles back onto him so he loses the stacks and you can attack him again. And another thing you can use for Deimos is Advance. It gives you and your subgroup 20 seconds of Aegis and Swiftness. Really nice for the pizzas if you're not really confident in your other skills. So, now we talk a bit about your tomes. So, as a heal fire, like in theory, this is a damage tome, but you're a healed firebrand. You only want to dip into this tome because of 2 reasons. Lesser Signet of Wrath. So you want to hit an enemy with any of the skills, which would be those. And Ashes of the Just. Ashes of the Just is a little DPS boost based on condition damage, and you just cast it on your subgroup and they get another condition damage increase. Just to mention it, the third skill is Pull. Nice to have, but it takes some time to press F1, the animation channels, and then cast 3, and this animation channels as well. So it's something you have to plan in advance and not cast on short now. So in theory, 1-5 is enough for a Heal Firebrand because you will trigger the Signet, and you apply the buff. But for DPS in exclamation marks, you can go 2, 4, 5, 1, 2. And you want to preferably use that while you're on staff, because staff is not a good weapon, and this is better than staff auto attack. Also, for the record, 4th skill is a fire combo field. And there's a blast finisher on staff too. So if you're really good, you can generate might with that. So, Tome of Resolve, you have 2. This is your healing skill. Straight up, best value is 5, 4, 1, 1, 1. Because 5 says increase the healing they receive on your allies. And then this is a big heal plus swiftness, and this is just spamming healing on your one. For the record, 2 is a condition cleanse. Okay. Tome of Courage. This is a bit in a weird situation because it's more or less a utility tome. On your 5th skill, be really, really careful about this. If you're tanking, it doesn't matter, but 5 applies 300 toughness to your subgroup if they stand inside of it. And this might change tanking based on the toughness on the tank. So be really, really careful about this. Otherwise, this is you apply the taunt condition onto a boss on foe. It's a little bit of breakbar damage, but the more important ones is the 3rd skill, which is a bubble that reflects projectiles. Really nice. You can use it on fires again. And the 1st skill is you can basically spam it for stability and additional swiftness, but you should be fine on swiftness. So on Heal Firebrand, this is not as severe as on, for example, Quick Firebrand or Connie Firebrand. So now, your weapons. X Shield is your default one. X3 is a CC. It's a pull in front of you. Be careful about it in, for example, VG, so you don't pull in Seekers with it. X2, you want to cast it off cooldown because it's a symbol. So remember, symbols heal, and it also grants Fury. And otherwise, you just auto attack on X. Try. It's not as severe on Heal Firebrand as on other Firebrand classes, but you want to finish your auto attack because this skill is actually rather strong in comparison to those two. Now onto Shield. Shield 4 gives Aegis and protection in front of you for your subgroup. More or less cast it off cooldown for protection. But if you know you have to block an attack in like 2 seconds before you cast it, after you wanted to cast it, then just wait the 2 seconds, cast Shield 4 to grant Aegis, and then you blocked an attack, and the DPS monkeys didn't have to dodge or something. Next thing, Shield 5. It's a projectile absorption. It's also a pushback to close people, to close foes. If you press this button, you will channel it for 4 seconds. In the meantime, you have this skill. If you press this, you heal your allies inside of the dome. It's actually a pretty nice heal. So keep that one in mind. During your usual rotation, you actually want to always stay on X Shield unless you have to swap to Staff or you want to cast F1. Because Keep Up Fury and just damage and CC on if needed is just way better than Staff. So, next, weapon set. You actually have, in my opinion, you have 2 options. The most default one is Staff. PSA, your Staff auto attacks are actually horrible. Like, if you play Heal Firebrand, imagine it like that. The floor is Staff auto attacks, okay? You don't want to touch the floor, so you don't cast Staff auto attacks if possible. On Staff, you have those 3 more or less interesting skills. Empower, it's healing, and you channel 12 might to your subgroup. Symbol of Swiftness, it's another symbol that heals, and you grant swiftness to allies. And Holy Strike, it's a healing skill again, and it's also a blast finisher. So for example, this is a light combo field, and if you cast 3 into 2, like 3 first and then the 2, it will cleanse conditions. Something to keep in mind. But you can also save this one. So you go, and then you go into your tome, you press 1, 5, 4, for example, and then you have a fire field, and then you can blast into it and you have might. So this is the mostly default weapon. Let's talk a bit about hammer. Like, the auto attack chain is actually better than staff, which is not really hard, but the very, very nice part about this one is symbol of protection. So the third skill in your auto attack chain is actually a symbol, which heals, but it also gives protection. This is really interesting. So if you have a protection problem and you think you don't need the staff, just go into hammer because it gives protection, and protection is a really, really strong boon. Otherwise, you have a launch, which is CC, really nice. And if you want, once in a while, you can cast Mighty Blow, which just smash the ground. Yep. Okay. So basically, hammer is good or better if you need protection and if you want CC, and if you really trust your druid. Because you will drop a bit of might generation, but as a druid, you should be capable to generate enough might yourself. So, the next slide. Ah, yes, but what about mace? So, you could replace axe with mace. Mace in itself is a very defensive weapon, but it enables regen if needed. So, for whatever reason, you are doing Lagos split, and there's no Druid and Heal Tempest, but you decide to go with 2 Heal Firebrand tanks. You can actually both take Mace, and with the Symbol of Fate, you generate enough regen for your subgroup. Otherwise, you have an auto attack that heal nearby allies with the third skill, good to have, and Protector Strike, which is, in my opinion, a really nice ability, but you would be dropping Axe for it, which I talk about after I explain the skill. Protect allies from the next incoming attack against them, and lash out when attacked, granting wounds to nearby allies and fully charging the passive burning effect. So this means if you stand close to an ally, I believe it's 180 range, and you block an attack, you grant Aegis, and you grant protection. Also really good for boon generation. But the thing is, you would be replacing Axe, which is, yeah, you would lose Fury generation, DPS, and the CC. Spicy take, you can actually replace Staff with Mace, but only if you really need the regen. Only because of that, because otherwise Staff is better with the utility you have on it. Or Hammer. So, that was my information dump so far. Let's quickly sum this up. You want to cast Mantra of Potence and Feel My Wrath off cooldown. You want to cast, this is a utility skill for quickness and might. Next part, cast Mantra of Solace. This is your heal skill every 7 seconds for quickness. And when Aegis is needed to block an attack on your subgroup. You want to cast Signet and F1 Tome off cooldown. This is the basic rule of thumb. Unless you know the boss is better, you can actually adjust the casting of the skills. For example, the Bane Signet with the CC. You wait shortly before the break bar is gone, you cast it, deal break bar damage, and gain the buff, give the buff. On X Shield, you want to cast 4 and 2 of cooldown for Fury and Protection, and you want to finish auto attack chains to min-max that a little bit. When you're swapping to Staff, you want to cast 4, 3, 2. The 2 is optional. Then go into F1 Tome, hit a 4 with it, cast a 5 one to apply the buff to your allies, and then onto Staff, and swap back to X Shield as soon as possible. Because your auto attacks, they are not doing a single thing. They're giga useless. It's not good. And 2, 3, 4 actually have a rather long cooldown. And other utility skills, you cast them when needed, like healing or CC or boons and so on and so on. So, this was the part about Heal Firebrand.